This is going to be a practical session about why knowledge systems break as companies scale and what actually is working. This is not about adding more content. This is not about a new chatbot. This is really centered around fixing the trust that your customers and your employees have in your knowledge systems. So, what we've been finding is that knowledge systems don't fail all at once. What they really do is they drift. Teams start with good intentions. They start with clean documentation. They start with a solid KB. They start with clear ownership. And then over time, the products evolve, the team grows, the cases pile up, and that content slowly drifts from reality. I've been a part of teams where it's a massive undertaking to keep documentation current and aligned with products. And this result is not lack of content. This is really what this starts to create is a lack of confidence. And this is the moment when teams start to work around knowledge instead of with knowledge. So how do you know if this is you, if this describes your situation? These are some of the things that we hear from the field when we talk to customers. This is what they're telling us about and what they're experiencing. So agents are double checking answers. They're relying on tribal knowledge. Customers are abandoning self-service. They're often opening tickets just to be safe. You're going to start to see duplicate articles appear because no one really trusts what already exists, right? That's a really common thing that you see with technical teams. And at this point, self-service still exists, but that functionally is failing. And this is the moment where teams are really working around the knowledge. The problem is upgrading your search, building FAQs, installing a generic chatbot, that's not going to solve that trust issue that you're having with customers and with your employees because keyword search only retrieves documents, right? It doesn't retrieve answers. Traditional portals, as we know them, they really assume that content is clean and that it's curated, which really is never a reality at scale. Your generic RAG ideas, right? Maybe someone on your team is building something like this, but they really optimize for fluency, right? For an answer that looks good on the surface, but may not actually be correct. And we're talking about hallucinations, of course. A confident wrong answer really is worse than no answer at all. And I think at this point, it's really great for us to get into highlighting what one of the real problems is. And that's that documents aren't the same as answers, right? Most enterprise knowledge lives in what you're seeing here. It lives in cases, it lives in bugs, it lives in Slack threads, not just in knowledge bases. So what breaks is not the storage, it's the ability to deliver a single trusted answer in context. And from what we've been working on with folks that we are building this for, is that there's a shift required, right? To really start thinking of knowledge as a living system and not a static library. And it's what we call knowledge ops. And this is how we see it getting built. It's creating a layer of governance that doesn't slow down teams, but what it's doing is it's really quietly enforcing trust. This is what really separates a scaling team from a stalled one is what we're seeing. And before we get into what we're building and how this works from a technology perspective, I wanted to give everyone on the call the ability to think of this in an agnostic way outside of a particular solution. And that's what this looks like, right? That's what this kind of shift looks like to a different kind of system. And this is where we recommend that you start. So what you would start out by doing is you'd be mapping your sources, right? Your real knowledge sources, bringing all those together. And then you've got to really clean and summarize all that content into one hub. And you can see what that looks like here, right? You've got to really detect irrelevant parts of the data. You've got to use a summarization tool, and you've got to be able to index all of that together so that you've got the ability to take multiple different types of inputs from your employees and your customers and still arrive on those same conclusions. And then once you do all that, you've got to be able to make sure that they are accessible across your different resources. You've got to be able to adapt to different language barriers and different types of questions. And then the final step is that in a RAG model, you've got to be able to trust what comes out on the other end. And we've had a lot of success with this. We've built what we are calling an answer system, an answer retrieval system built off of our knowledge agent. And NICE has had tremendous success with this, as I'll get into in more detail in the next few minutes. NICE faced very familiar challenges to the ones that I've described on this call, where they faced duplicate cases, inconsistent answers, underused case data. Their portal search wasn't delivering accurate results. And the way that they surmised that was because cases were still getting opened, agents weren't trusting what was sitting there, and they were finding that the portal was often getting bypassed. So the issue was not effort, the issue was really structure. And the change that they got into is that they stopped treating knowledge as a set of articles and they started to leverage historical cases as first class knowledge. What they found was these answers delivered consistently across portals, CRMs, and collaboration tools really led them to start significantly reducing cases and pushing people into this knowledge portal in these areas that they built in a way that started to have profound results. And that's what we're going to get into in a little bit more. So without further ado, what I want to show you now is straight from NICE themselves, and get into a clip here that shows you some of their results.
We use ResolveSX. ResolveSX brings our knowledge sources into a central, clean version, right? And they've done amazing work for us this year. We have 12 or 13 different knowledge sources all converging into one. And then we're letting SupportLogic, the Xfind product, do the magic of determining what knowledge source is best correlated, what's the match rate, at what point do we display the knowledge, at what point do we say, maybe we're just going to show you some search results. And so again, I think there's a little bit of the magic happening that SupportLogic does for us that we couldn't do for ourselves. It was too messy for us to solve. We had a very successful deployment of the CoreSX product. And when we saw that SupportLogic acquired Xfind, that day I was talking to my chief operations officer saying, this is an opportunity for us to upgrade our customer experience. And we started doing research, we started envisioning what was possible, and we found that 85% of our customers went to the portal to open a case with no deflection. Only 50% were searching. And so we felt like that was maybe not a good experience. Maybe it was indicative of a bad process. As we started looking at what we could do, and then we did a proof of concept with SupportLogic and the ResolveSX product, and we'd say, we're at 80% accurate. Now we're at 90% accurate. And now we're about 98% accurate. When information is available, SupportLogic is able to find it and deliver it. When we deployed ResolveSX in our customer portal, it was hard because it's all implied. We started noticing about a 4 to 5% decrease in monthly cases, and we traced that back to SupportLogic, and we believe intrinsically that's what's contributing to this trend. By the end of this month, we've repurposed our case creation path, surfacing that to the customer in the portal and letting them say, this looks good to me, thank you so much for your help, or I need some more help, let's go ahead and proceed with the case. But it's, again, integrating a kind of search into the case path so that the customer then has that delivered to them in a very generative paragraph with the links to the both sourced and referenced knowledge to bring the information forward. It's no longer a list of sources of knowledge articles, but is bringing that generative experience which they expect. We used to say, if you showed someone the right answer, there was only a 30 to 40% chance that they clicked through, at that click-through rate. But by delivering a RAG response, now all they have to do is look at the screen that they're already looking at and hopefully read. So we think that click-through rate, or that actualization rate of seeing the knowledge and being able to assess if this is good or not, is going to be higher. We did a POC in December, and we were fully deployed on our customer portal in May. That team did amazing work for us, meeting a very tight deadline with an existing vendor. Since May, it's taken a few more months to wire up another 8 data sources of different types of knowledge and different systems to get our internal search deployed. We are currently a Salesforce Classic shop, and we started looking at the Assist module, and it requires us to move to Lightning. So we took the customer portal and we asked SupportLogic, can you give us an internal portal? So inside Salesforce in Classic, we provide the same interface, the same ability to insert a question, and look at all 13 of our sources and come back with a generative paragraph with referenced and linked sources so that our internal users, who account for 20 to 30% of our cases, can also benefit from support logic. We're expecting to see a larger deflection from our internal users, and one thing we heard from our senior engineers and from R&D was, this was written down in product documentation 9 months ago and the engineer didn't read it. They're not reading the documentation. I'm like, there's 10, 13 different sources. What do you expect them to do? And so by bringing support logic search into teams where they're collaborating in their workflow, they can mention support logic AI and type in their question, and it will give them a nice generative RAG answer, allowing us to get to resolution for some cases much faster if it's been written down. I describe it as a living knowledge base. The problem with KCS is that it's a place in time where knowledge was accurate, and then the next day, the next release requires a lot of maintenance and work of the future potential of someday somebody might want to see this, and it has to be accurate. So you spend a lot of time procuring knowledge that may or may not be used with the hope of achieving a better customer experience. While we're using actually historic cases, the case we closed yesterday gets ingested into the LLM today and can be used to deflect a case this afternoon. And that's amazing.
I'll stop there. I love hearing this story from Chris because he tells it so well, right? They're taking 12 to 13 sources that are changing all the time, cases, knowledge sources, bug reports, all these things. They're bringing it into one system, and then they're pushing it out to an internal portal and an external portal, and they're seeing a huge difference in how they're providing support. And you can see some of those numbers here. It's a really great success story about how this can work. They're really leveraging the cases, they're delivering across these different areas, and the governance is all happening behind the scenes. There's no manual policing going on. It's really an automated approach, and they're really having an incredible results with it. So precision RAG is what makes this all possible. We really think of it as accuracy over fluency, right? Your answers are grounded exclusively in customer-owned knowledge. Every response is traceable back to a source. The system knows what it can and can't answer, and there's a real avoidance of hallucinations. That is so critical in search situations, where if you go to search and you can trust that you are going to get an answer if there is one, or no answer if there isn't one, you're going to trust that system so much more. And that's huge for enterprise. It's a critical piece. So how does this work? Here's a little diagram that we built around how precision RAG works. And you can see a classic feedback loop going on here where a query comes in, it's processed, there's modeling that's added in through the knowledge sources here in the bottom. Guardrails are applied to everything coming in. And then once an answer is developed, it's then fed back through those guardrails and it's checked again. That's one of the key components to precision RAG, is that these original answers are then fed back through the system to be verified once more. It's a huge step. And then once those answers are synthesized, they can be spread across these different avenues, right? You can see that it can go into feeding your chatbot, like what you've got in Salesforce, right? It can feed a portal. It can feed inside of your CRM, for example, in the assist widget that we provide if you're a support logic customer. So there's all these different avenues that Tali's about to show us in a demo where these really precise answers can take your dozens of sources, pull it into one precise answer, and then feed it to you in these different avenues. So right before we get into the live demo, this is really what this means for knowledge leaders, is that now you're really measuring how your portals are trusted, right? You're really measuring how your customers are feeling. You can really expose the gaps that may be happening a lot easier. And you can start treating cases as living knowledge, not dead history. So without further ado, I want to welcome Tali, who's going to give us a live demo. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to
Thank you, Ron.
hand the stage over to you. Yeah, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Absolutely. I would love to demo a few use cases that are actively enabled for our customers. I'm going to share my screen. Please tell me if you can see my screen.
It is, yeah, I can see your screen.
Fantastic. Just move it out. So I'm going to demo a few use cases that are actively enabled and benefit our customers to follow the conversation here. The first one is the common one that is enabled for internal users within the CRM. As Chris mentioned, some customer users are internally using CRM databases, and we need to make sure that they have answer to any questions that they have. So if I go to the CRM and enable our internal support logic portal, they will be able to ask the questions and get their answers right away. So here you can see on the screen internal support logic portal where internal users can ask questions. For example, how can I set or configure SSO? Sorry. Now the access available for any customer users. The sources that configured here, those are internal sources such as past cases, knowledge articles, bugs or engineering issues, also channels like collaboration if they have MS Teams or Slack. All those can be connected to the sources, and the answer is it will come, it will follow right on the screen. You can see all the directions, and below we link the recommended articles. So we have all the articles that directly support the answer, and you also can see a broader access to the articles that refer to the topic of the question. If customer has variety of filters mapped, they can access the filters and also be able to filter through the sources if they want to narrow the articles that coming back for the research. Obviously, they can access the articles, they can copy them, etc., etc. As I mentioned, this is the portal for internal usage. Similar portal available for community users. Those are the users that are the clients of our customers. Those users usually access the community portal of the customer and can interact with similar functionality there as well. So for example, if I am the client, I can access my portal and ask questions, for example, how to reset my password. So instead of opening the case and asking the help for resetting the password, I can just go inside, ask my question, get my reply, etc., and do the reset myself. I don't need any other help. As I mentioned, here similar functionality. You can see the articles that directly answer my question, but also suggested articles if I want to go deeper and have dedicated following questions. In addition to this, we also enable a chat agent force integration. So if I already have an open case or any other additional functionality, I can interact with the agent force and ask, for example, what is the status of my ICA assignment case? And the integration will help to identify the case if there is any, reply my direct questions, and directly with my next steps of action. This is a direct integration with the agent force available for customers that have this functionality enabled. In addition to those, I also can help, we can also help engineers or agents that work directly on cases. When you enter the case or engineer go into any open case, we have different agents that scan the case and provide some following steps. So the infrastructure, what I'm going to show, it's an issue resolution workflow. This is the workflow that's focusing on helping the agent to resolve the case end to end, full workflow. So it starts with the summarization agent that will scan the details of the case and summarize the current state, the problem, and everything that related to the current situation of the case. It will provide some clarity score to identify if the situation of the case is clear. If it's not clear, we will go into the next agent, which is the language agent that will help us to structure the question to the customer to ask the following questions to clarify the case. And when the customer will reply, the summary will identify results and summarize the case accordingly. There is a knowledge source. If the clarity score is clear, like here it's 5 is the maximum we can get, the knowledge summarization will kick in place. It's a knowledge agent. The knowledge agent will identify the relevant articles that reply to the question, to the problem of the case, and summarize those articles into the answer, theoretically, that will help agent to proceed with the case resolution. The summarization, the knowledge summarization will provide the summarized answer to the agent. And the next step is the language agent, which will take this summarization and theoretically draft response to the customer. This is what you will have here. Now, we do keep agent user in the loop, so we not automatically reply to the customer at this state. We will ask the engineer to review the proposed solution, and if there is no any edits needed, we can engineer can just reply to the customer directly from here, or if needed, they can approach, edit, and provide any additional wording into the message before resigning. As I mentioned before, this is our portal solution as well. So you will have access to the articles that mapped. So knowledge summary is taking into account any articles or any knowledge sources that are available. As we mentioned, it can be historical cases, it can be communication channels like MS Teams or Slack. It absolutely can be engineering issues like bugs or feature requests or any engineering sources, and obviously the knowledge sources that company maintain. All of them available here. So if a customer want to deep dive, he can go through the articles as well. Inside the case, in addition to the resolve area, when we can summarize and provide a response inside the case, we also provide the search engine, exactly the same that we saw previously with for internal users and for the customers portal. Theoretically, any user that interacts with the case can ask specific questions and get the same answers that they noticed before. Now, as for the knowledge source itself, we also help with creation of the new knowledge articles. So if the case is closed, I can open here an example. The summarization agent will scan all the history of the case and all the development of the case, the replies, the solution, and everything. And it will summarize everything into the article, which will be proposed to the engineer at the end of the journey. So the engineer, again, it's human in the loop. We're not doing automatically anything, but this is something that the engineer can, by one click, get, review, and if the article is accurate based on the history of the case and the case resolution, we can, by one click, just deploy this and publish into the Salesforce Knowledge Center, and the human will need to go through it and approve it and add it to the knowledge sources. So this is something that helps customers maintain their knowledge sources, have them up to date with the most recent information, and just leverage the technology to get all the best from knowledge summarization and maintenance. I think it summarizes mostly the main areas of the demo. Again, to wrap it up, solution provide the searches and answers for internal users using the internal sources, external users or business partners using the community searches. Again, the sources can be structured differently. And there is also dedicated solutions to the engineers or agents that work on the case during the case life and also at the end of the case life when we ready with new creation of the knowledge source. Ryan, I think I can finish here the demo.
Thank you, Tali. That was great. I'll take the share back.
Thank you.
So, just to summarize, the future of self service isn't deflection. We really think of it as confidence. When answers are trusted, customers, they stay self sufficient, right? Agents move faster. Folks, if you've got questions, I've got just a few more slides. This slide I have up on my screen here is a summary of everything that Resolve SX does for your business, right? Driving that efficiency, enhancing CX, empowering your team. And as you saw with what NICE is experiencing, really affecting core indicators across CX and support. So, as I wrap up, I want to remind you that we've got a very flourishing YouTube channel, similar to what I showed from Chris earlier today. We've got incredible customer testimonials. We've got really technical deep dives about all the different ways that we're building machine learning models and different AI type models to really power the workflows that make your support and your success so much more fluid and so much more successful. So please join me in a couple weeks. I'll be with Karan Sood, our Chief Product Officer. If you sign up for the automatic reoccurring schedule, you'll automatically be enrolled in this. But on January 28th, we're going to be talking all about Model Context Protocol. This is a very new concept from the last year or so. What this really looks like is this is the way to take different types of data, right? Sales conversations, product conversations, and pipe them through really tested support logic AI models. So now it's not just your data coming into support logic, being analyzed by our AI, and then insights and workflows being driven. Now you can take other different types of data and pump those into these same AI models and then back into your data cloud or back into a different analytics database or where you process your intelligence. So it's a really exciting way that AI models are being democratized and used in new ways. So thank you for joining me. Tali, thanks so much for that awesome demo.